906 Outdoors is brought to you in part by Blades Bait and Tackle, your year-round connection to fishing bait Enoch. We're back in the blacksmith shop for part 2 of our knife project. Tonight we'll get a look at the finished knife and finish it off with a handmade sheath. 9 million acres of forest, 1,700 miles of continuous shoreline, 4,300 lakes, 12,000 miles of streams, more than 300 waterfalls, 15 counties, 2 time zones, and 1 area code. Welcome to the Upper Peninsula. Welcome to 906 Outdoors. .906 Outdoors is brought to you by Cooking Wild Seasonings. Make it fresh, make it yours.
Now the next step is going to be I'm going to grind this down. It'll look pretty much the way I want it when the blade is all completely done. Then eventually polishing it to the final polish. Then I'll put my stamp in it. Then after that, then we'll harden it. Then we'll draw a temper on it. Because once we harden, it'll be too hard for a knife blade. And at that particular point, if you hit it on something, it'd probably break. And so we got to draw some of the hardness out of it. So now we'll start grinding away on it. Should be this way. That's the starting of the grinding. And I usually leave this part here for the belt sander. I got a nice flat platinum on there, and that'll clean it up real good. Whereas if I go on a round wheel, I can't get it nice and square like I can on there, or nice and flat, I should say. This particular grind here, I've been doing this for quite a while, making it like this. There's other knives out there that have something similar to that. Of course, I don't think they do them by hand, but I kind of think that improves the looks of it, and then it gives it more strength too. And then we're gonna start working on it with the belt sander now. This rubber here, that cleans the belt. Now we'll go to a finer grit. Now I'm going to go to a 320 grit. Now we'll go to a 600 grit here. Oh, we're going to use 800 grit. Now we're all done with the sanding with belt sander. We went down to 800. Just the final sanding was 800. So now we're going to buff it and see how many scratches are left in it yet. I'll be buffing with 3 different grits. I'm going to start out with the coarse, then go to the finest. Cleaning the wheel up, so I'm able to take more. It'll take more compound that way. I'm gonna go to a lighter grit. It's pretty close to being done now. The next step I'll do before I do the final buffing, I'll put my stamp in it. You can tell it's handmade.
Today's show is brought to you in part by Rapid River Knife Works, home of Michigan's largest custom knife factory showroom.
What we'll do is we'll put the knife blade inside the kill here. What's going to happen here now is it's going to start ramping itself up to 437 degrees for an hour. Then from there it'll go into the second stage, and then it'll go from 437 up to 1475. The chances are there'll be blisters all over the steel. And to combat that, I got an argon set up here that makes an inner atmosphere inside there. It'll combat that blistering. We take and hold it at that temperature for approximately 20 minutes. At that particular point, I'll open it up, take the knife blade out, and put it in 100-degree tempering oil. Okay, here we go, 1475 at 100-degree oil. And we go back and forth with the blade. We don't go against the side of the blade. If I go the other way, you run a chance of warping the blade. In heating the oil, it it cools it faster than it would if it was cold oil because of the viscosity of the oil. Thinner the oil, of course, by heating it, the faster it gets rid of the heat up to a point. Some people say, well, why don't you use water? Well, you'd be too severe for this type of steel. You use water, you're more than likely crack it. Now the blade is hardened. So then we got to draw some of the hardness out. So we punch in a 260 for the first hour. Then we go over to 400 for the second hour. Then I'll take it out and I'll just leave it go down to ambient temperature. At that particular point, I can take a dull file, slides over the blade. A sharp file, it should start grabbing a little bit. We had this blade up real nice and shiny, but that's when it was in a soft state. But after heat treating, it became fairly hard. And in the heat treating process, of course, there was some distortion on the blade. Not much, but there was. So I had to go through the whole finishing sequence again. I had to go through all the different belts, and now I'm going through the different compounds. Okay, now we'll go to second stage here. Different wheel. Don't ever try to buff going in the edge. That wheel will grab this thing and take it right out of your hand. Only God knows where it's going to end up. Believe me. Okay, the second wheel, it's done. Then I go to a real light compound. Still needs a little bit final polishing, but I'll do that after I get the handle put on it. These are all the components that we're going to be using to make the handle. The first thing we'll be doing is cutting a piece of brass off here for the hilt. We'll be doing the same thing with all these other spacers here. All these hilts will be silver soldered on. Then I'll take and make a spacer out of this here. This is my card of paper, different colors, red, white, and blue. Then I'll take a piece of this. It's a man-made material. That'll go there. Then there'll be another one of these spacers going here. Then there'll be a thin brass piece that'll be going here. The whitetail antler handle will be going on here. That's going to be a real Uper handle. And we already cut the slot in there for the handle to go over the tank. Once I get all these spacers cut, put in place, then I'll take them all apart, take them all off of here again. Then I epoxy every one of them, put them together, put the whole thing. Then I fill this with epoxy, put the whole thing together. When it's all epoxied together, I let it set overnight, drill a hole, and then I put a brass pin in there. Yeah, I probably wouldn't really have to do it, but I do it anyway to make sure that, somehow or another the handle could come loose, which I doubt very much it could, but it just safeguards against that. And then when the whole knife is all done, I can take this here and I can round this off, make it nice round button on the end here, and then I can scrimshaw a buck's head in it. This here knife here, this is really old, but you can see where this buck's head scrimshawed in there.
An immense amount of hammering, grinding, sanding, filing, polishing, and buffing has transformed this common ordinary cultivator tooth into this remarkable and functional work of art.
Well, we finally put it all together, cleaned up the handle and all that, and then we scrimshawed the end too, with a little buck's head on it. That's in case so we're hunting, we forget what they look like. We can look at that end there. The spacer is spalded beech. Thought maybe it'd be more appropriate to have a piece of wood with the antler. And it pretty much came from the same area where the antler came from. And it's been stabilized. What do you mean by being stabilized? I sent it down to Wood Lab downstate in a vacuum chamber. He pulls many inches of vacuum. And he inserts a resin that's much like liquid plexiglass. And it goes right through the whole piece of wood, so it's basically plastic wood. Stuff will last forever. Being that it's spalded, if I didn't do that, it wouldn't hold up. It would be kind of crumbly. And next step now is making a sheath. We cut out a piece of leather the size we need, soaked it in water, softened it up. And then after it was in the water for about 20 minutes, I took it out and I put the knife in there. And then I just hand formed it around the knife. So, and then after, then I take the knife out, of course, and wipe the knife blade off real well, the whole knife. Then you just let it set set it for usually overnight. And then I usually do this in the evening, and the next morning I can start working on the sheath. The next step now will be putting the belt loop on there. This is glue by Tandy. Tandy Leather sells this glue. Works real well. This stuff dries clear. It takes about 10 minutes for it to set up good. Usually want this to come out about the same height as what the end of the knife will be. Now the next step will be putting a rivet in there. And the next step will be to map out the blade. Make sure you get the knife in there as best you can. You try to keep this knife here especially as sharp as you can get it, so you can do it almost one cut. So now we got the start. So the next step will be to mark it out for tooling. What you do is you saturate the leather pretty much with it. When you get this far on, as far as the tooling part of it goes, make sure you don't go hitting it with your thumbnail or whatever, because I could really make a mark in there big time with just a fingernail. What it does is it softens the leather up for tooling. You can do the same thing with water, but this stuff seems to last longer. The pair of dividers I took and I made one leg longer than the other, and that'll be a guide here for this part here. I gotta make sure that it's wide enough. Called a swivel knife. It works out very well. It works very well for a lot of different things. So that's going to be my border. That's my logo. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around the border with this little tool here. A lot of people, they use a hammer made from rawhide. I know I had always had good luck with this little hard rubber hammer. Here I've done this before, this type of design. The last couple sheets I made were like this. The next step now will be to cut our piece that goes in between the two here. When we finally put it together, it'll be sandwiched in there like this, so that when you put the knife in there, you won't be cutting into the stitching, you'll be cutting into that leather instead. Try not to get any anus glue on any of the leather that you want to dye too, because it makes it rough. I suppose some people got different ways of doing this than the way I'm doing it, but whatever works for a person. We'll leave this set now for a half hour. Now we got it glued together here, and so now what I'm going to do is finish trimming it. There, so now what we'll do is we'll go out and sand it down. What I'm going to do is change the wheels on here and put a wooden wheel on with a leather. I'll take and do the edge, burnish the edge on that. And what it does is it makes the edge real hard. Now we'll go back in the house and trim this. Trim that little edge off of there. There, so now we got the edges nice and rounded. Now we'll take and mark it off for the stitching. Next step is take this little wheel, got all these little cutters on the end, and then what we'll do is we'll try to follow that the best we can, that groove. What I do is I take a pin and mark them real good, so then I can see them good. Probably wouldn't have to do this, but it helps. What I do is I drill a hole. Same in the back.
906 Outdoors is brought to you in part by Christ, your Northwoods neighborhood store.
Do a double stitch here. What we're going to do is bring it up, get it even. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to double this here up on the end. And what I like doing this here is you can tell it's hand stitched because a machine won't do this. It's a thread that I get from Tandy Leather. It's about 30 pounds test, and I think it's rated more than that because I pull on this quite hard sometimes, and I never ever had a break. And it's all waxed. This here is just a clamp. I designed it years ago and built it. It's got all the parts cut out and put together. And then I stole an idea from my grandpa. He made a table and he used wooden leaf springs. And so I did the same thing here. I got made out of oak. I've been using this thing for I don't know how many years now. And them springs, they still have their tension on them yet. This is a double stitch. So what I mean by double stitch is that one of the stitches could get cut and you still have the other stitch to hold yet. A machine stitch don't have that. Okay, what I'm doing now is I got to the end. So now I'm going to take and double back on the stitching. And then what that'll do is lock it so it won't come apart. Being that both of them are, at the end, you got to do something to kind of, they won't unravel on the end. There, that's it. All taken. Cut those threads off. For all practical purposes, the sheath is done. Nice and tight, won't fall out. Comes out easy, goes in easy. Now we gotta do is dye it. This here leather dye is from Tandy too. It's mahogany. Now we'll leave it dry for a little while. Okay, now I'm going to put a little bit of neat's foil on here. It just kind of softens the leather a little bit. They help get the dye a little more even too. Now I've got one more step yet. Let's put the final sealer on it. This here's a sealer, super sheen they call it by Tandy. Doesn't make it real shiny or anything, but I gotta do about 3 coats like this. This kind of brings the color out nicer too. I love that mahogany color. I don't know. Another one is British tan. That's another nice color. Quite a bit lighter than this, but it is pretty stuff. It'll take about 10 minutes or so for it to dry. On the whaling ships, these guys were out there sometimes 2-3 years, and they had a lot of time to spend and idle hands and stuff. So they got whale's teeth and they started scratching pictures of the loved ones back home and other things that they knew of. And they used different berry juices to color them. And I primarily just use black, but I have done stuff with color. I've done birds, cardinals, and that was all done in color. I'll take and draw out what I want to do first with a pencil, and then I go ahead and I use a tool, and this one here is one that I made. And actually I sharpened this with a 30 power glass, and anyway I can put it in there and I can look at it, and I can see, boy, I tell you, you think it's sharp now, but when you do it by hand, you think you got it sharp, and you look at under 30 power and you see how dull it really is. But this thing is really extremely sharp. And what you do is you draw your picture and then you go ahead and you scratch it in there. You see how sharp that tool is. Made a scratch in my thumbnail. Now if I take and rub ink into that, it's an Indian ink, permanent ink. You wipe it off, see the ink stayed in the scratch. And you could scratch various depths, for shading, or do cross hatching for shading. Where the name Scrimshaw comes from, nobody really knows. But what the word Scrimshaw, what it means is wasting time. That's what Scrimshaw means. So you see I wasted a lot of time here. Had fun doing it though. say it's not the only way to make a knife, but by golly gee, it's the Yooper way. What I'm doing is I'm bringing it down with 320 grit, and I'm bringing the edge, putting the edge on her. And being that the blade is thin, I'm not going to bring it back too much. I'm not going to cut way back on the blade. It's starting to get there now. Yeah, now I'm going to go to 400 grit. Now buff the edge a little bit. It's a hard wheel with a kind of an aggressive compound. My dad told me years ago, he said, you want to see if a knife's sharp, he says, you hold your fingernail about on a 45-degree angle, and if it sticks, it's sharp. And then another thing too he showed me was that if you want to see if there's any nicks in the blade at all left, you take and you just run run it on your thumbnail. If there's any nicks in there whatsoever, you're going to feel it. Now there is a spot right there. It's not nicked, but the edge is rough. So I'm going to work on that just a little bit. That does work. Yeah, this stuff here, it's called Mother. It's a good wax, car wax, and it works really good for knife blades. It's all done.